Awesome.
All right. So we're recording now. Thank you for coming on. This is another episode of Burn the Ship. I appreciate everyone coming, listening, hanging out. I've had a long day, so I'm obviously just putting this together a little bit last minute, so I appreciate you bearing with me here. But I've got a new friend, new connection that I've made, Nikki. I won't steal all your thunder. I'll definitely let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself. But Nikki's with Hustle Hunters. I think that's a lot of what we do as well, is we're kind of always looking for entrepreneurs that are working really, really hard. I say this all the time on the podcast, is that people definitely invest in companies, people definitely invest in ideas, but more than anything, people invest in people. And that is, that's kind of the core of what startups are. Is if you work hard and you kind of build that, rapport with the people in your community, you can get a whole lot done. And I think Nikki and myself, we relate on the idea that you have to connect hustlers with hustlers in order for to continue to make your network go around. So by all means, my friend, take the floor.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bailey. You nailed it, right? It's that human first, human centric, like we're all people. We're looking for something that's more than a robot, right? We want that intuition, that knowledge, that creativity. So yeah, I run Hustle Hunters. Spent about 3.5, almost 4 years now. I'm a startup person. Love startups. Love the hustle. Love the quick paced, the minimal bureaucracy, and just that idea that innovation's happening, and we get to be people that are changing our own future lives and that of folks around us. So kind of the impetus of Hustle Hunters was recognizing, been in startups for a long time, recognized it's really hard to hire when you don't have someone doing the hiring.
Oh yeah.
You're hiring because you have more work on your plate in your day-to-day than you can manage. And then hiring takes a lot of time, focus, and energy. And it's people, right? At the end of the day, you're trying to woo someone onto your team to give up whatever career and job and friendships and connections they have and bring them over. And that takes a lot of handholding. That takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of curiosity and empathy and humility to really get on their level and figure out what could get them to make that move. Is this a lot? Is this the opportunity for them? So my team and I, we spend a fair amount of time thinking about like hiring from a holistic standpoint, specifically for startups, because as a startup, we're innovating, right? We need a recruiting solution that hasn't been one size fits all. We need something that's unique as our companies are. And I can kind of give you quick insight into kind of the founding of Hustle Hunters. So Nikki, I always want to share my pronouns are she, her. And in founding Hustle Hunters, I wanted to kind of play with the idea that there's all sorts of groups of folks, myself being a mom of a newborn, that I didn't feel like the startup space was for me anymore. But I knew that I brought really good work to the table. But for me, I needed to show up at 9:30 instead of 9, because that's when my daycare opened, was at 9 in the morning. And ended up working at Milk Store, phenomenal startup doing breast milk shipping, all about empowering moms to build the balance or integration that they want. And I remember talking to my boss there, the CEO, Kate, and she said, wait, you mean you'd rather show up at 9:30, like ready to work, instead of at 9, having done all these logistics and dropped your kid off at a bunch of other people's houses before they can go to daycare that opens at 9, so you're like actually ready? I'm like, yeah, oh, it makes total intuitive sense, right? Employees are able to show up with all their baggage and all their chaos and all their kids or pets or whatever that is. We're able to do our best work there. And kind of was trying to figure out what made me a really good asset on the job market. What made so many of the folks I knew an asset on the job market? We thought a lot about the word hustle. So Bailey, you just mentioned like the term hustle a lot. And what really stuck to me there and why I named my company Hustle Hunters was that we know when to run and when to rest. We know, kind of like, think of like a high level athlete. You think of them as like a hustler, but also they know how to take care of their body. They know how to be strategic in their prioritization. There's so many little pieces that, so much of us say that intangibles, but if we lean deeper, we're able to kind of define what that looks like. So I like to always caveat, I'm less on the like hustle culture burnout train and much more on the like, let's build something together as owners, making sure that we're all going to still be there and alive once that innovation is done.
No, yeah, I relate to that. Where are you from, for the people in the audience?
Yeah, I grew up in Massachusetts, went to school at Allegheny College in Pennsylvania, and then moved west. So spent 10 years down in the Bay Area, and then 2 years ago moved up to Portland, Oregon.
Nice. I have some friends. I have some clients out there in Portland. That's fun. And what does the startup community look like in Portland? Are you working with people nationally, or what does like the actual rendering of your service look like?
Yeah, so we work almost entirely with fully remote companies, actually. And some of that's happened organically. I thought I would have a stronger Bay Area hub because we think of Bay Area as this like
Sure.
startup space. And Most of the companies that we work with really want to promote that flexibility. They recognize that you can hire great talent if you don't limit yourself to a small geography. So I have a couple folks I'm working with here in Portland. I'm definitely learning the startup scene here. I moved during COVID, so it hasn't been like as meetup friendly, but I've been really excited lately to start meeting some amazing entrepreneurs up here. Folks kind of all around. I mean, I have clients who are in Texas and Ohio. Some I just visited some folks in DC, some in the Bay. Like it's been pretty great to see what companies can look like. You know, I had a client who says, we've never had an office because the three co-founders couldn't agree on a state to live in. So we couldn't agree and we're like all in on this company. How the hell are we supposed to expect like our clients or our candidates and like employees to agree on one place to be?
Sure, absolutely. And how do you find and connect with the companies that you're connecting with?
A lot of it is through reputation and word of mouth. I mean, we all know as business leaders, like that's the dream, right? As we do the work that we do, sign our name on it because we believe in it. None of us are really out here to get, I mean, maybe we're out here to get rich. I'd love to get rich doing this work, but I also like really believe in the mission of what we're doing and like the innovative approach that we can bring there. So finding clients by doing good work is a strong way to do that. Networking is always important. Just started doing some work on social media, been on Instagram a lot, just kind of like delivering value. Bailey, I know that's important to you.
Oh,
When
yeah.
you think of customers, you're always wanting to bring value. So just kind of sharing the things we talk about with our clients and candidates, putting that out into the world a little bit, because at the end of the day, the more human-centric hiring approaches that exist in our world, the better.
Sure. And so the name of the podcast is Burn the Ship, right? And have you heard, you've heard probably the phrase burn the ship, or no?
Yeah, I've heard it. I think people come with different approaches to it. But
Sure. Well, burning the ship to us is, Cortez lands in South America and he tells his men to burn all their ships that are on the beach, right? That is our, we're not going back. And that is literally what, when we first started this podcast, it started out discussing small business with small business owners. And you most certainly have to have burned your ship to be in that small business space, And I wanted to know from your point of view, going from working for a startup with a newborn to kind of almost being a startup at one point to being this very mature company that brings a lot of value to the people that kind of wear the same shoes you used to wear. Tell me that story and when you kind of burned your ship and went on, kind of went on your own.
Yeah, I was working part-time at Milk Stork and kind of started this on the side because I worked part-time at Milk Stork and I had this fascinating life where I could do big problem solving at Milk Stork. And then on Wednesdays, I was able to push my kid at the playground. And I just talked to so many specifically moms who were just like, how do I get your life? And I remember thinking like, I don't recommend the path I took because it was kind of weird. I kind of just got lucky that this company happened to be near my house that I work at now. And realized, then you hear all these startups, specifically in the Bay Area, that are also really they're struggling to find great talent. And, myself as a parent, I kind of looked back and said, wait a second, if you're looking for like experienced talent with 10 years of experience out of college, that's like assuming someone went to higher education. Now you're like in your mid 30s. Most, not all, but many folks are at least thinking about where do kids play in their life? Where could kids play in their life? So if we're not actively hiring parents or making space for parents on purpose, we're actually kind of turning our backs on a pretty significant portion of the talent market. So fast forward ahead, I realized that was really only supporting mostly white moms like me that had financial privilege of their partners working in tech. So who wanted kind of this like more flexible part-time work. So now we really focused in around what are the historically excluded talent groups in the tech industry that a lot of companies aren't looking at, whether it's unintentionally or intentionally, right? Like the tech scene is very white, very male driven, very male dominated, specifically cis men in heterosexual relationships. So when we look at that, we think, okay, that didn't happen by accident. So we actually have to move away from that status quo and start building trust with these historically excluded candidate groups. So caregivers was kind of like the initial one that I started with, but I recognized that was like a small niche. So now we spend a lot of our time learning what does it mean to be an Indigenous employee at a company where maybe you're the only, right? We talk a lot about the only versus the first. If you're on a team of 6, it's a great time to start building and just kind of identifying and naming what you have. And you asked kind of like me walking in those shoes. That's been my journey, right? Is I'm a white woman and I've had the privilege of building a company with a lot of folks that don't look like me and don't have my background. So there's been a lot of learning experiences there for me. And because of that, it's just instant empathy with our client base, right? I am them. I am these
Sure.
founders who are really scared to give up parts of their business, really scared to give up the marketing funnel because they've done it themselves, right? And it lets us really dig deep, because a founder making a hire versus someone at a Fortune 500 company making a hire, you're not as emotionally connected. You're not as like physically in your body connected. And that's where we get to spend a lot of our time just unpacking, like, what are we scared of in this hire?
Sure.
What's going to have to change internally if we brought this person on? Are we ready to make a hire that doesn't look like us? Are they going to be safe here? Like, asking a lot of those questions that are hard ones. And we normally have to figure out what the answers are, but that's kind of where the magic gets to happen. And that's where we get to figure out, okay, how do we build a truly diverse foundational team? Because that early team, like you said, that's your business.
Sure.
That's going to make or break where you end up.
And so it sounds to me like you guys are placing talent in a lot of different sectors within a company, right? Because I
Yeah.
know a lot of, like, I've actually got a friend of mine that probably you would like to connect with. She's pretty close to me. Her name's Dana, and she runs a company called Hive Talent Acquisition, and it's very similar to yours. It's women owned business, and she focuses a lot on the talent that you wouldn't normally comb through, honestly, and finds the value in there and places them in places where they find very valuable. And she has a very a deep love for that. But it sounds like your company, alongside her company, what you do is it's not only, you know, developers. It's not only tech talent that are writing code for you, or, you know, talent that is not going to be a permanent part of your team. You guys are placing places in very integral parts of different businesses for
Yeah.
different reasons. And can you tell me a little bit about that, kind of how you build that database of people that are valuable in different areas?
I'm so glad you asked that question, Bailey. It's such an important thing. So when we built Hustle Hunter, the bet that we made and have seen come through with a lot of strength is that we'd rather build that relationship with the company, recognizing that the unique thing is the company, the culture, the values, and the ability to code or market. Like, the hard skills are something that's almost easier to add because it's more tangible,
Sure.
versus saying, let's only work. I mean, plenty of great recruiting firms only do sales or only do marketing. Our approach is a little different because it's so early stage. And an example I can give you of that is, oh, long answer short, it's very hard because we're so broad in what that looks like. So instead of focusing on just having all of these different sections, we really focus on the type of person that's going to thrive at a startup. So that's someone who's a builder. They bring a lot of ownership, they have a lot of pride, a lot of curiosity, right? A lot of problem solving. They're less focused on like the hierarchy, and they're more excited about like, let's solve this problem together and kind of figure out where that goes. So we kind of find that, like, we had a couple of product marketer roles open at one point, and we'd find people on LinkedIn. We'd go out into the communities we engage with and bring people to the table. And on paper, almost everyone we found would probably be a good fit at any of the three. And I don't think we ended up submitting anyone to more than one client, because once we got on in a conversation with someone and started to understand like what motivates them, what's the impact they want to make in the world, and what are their core values, it was pretty obvious, like, oh, you need to talk to this client, like, because this is the
Sure.
role for you, because like you're so connected and aligned. And we find that if we over index for skills at this early stage, when I say early stage, we're in like the seed, series A, series B, not that you need to be venture founded, but kind of in that like scaling of like first 50 to 100 hires.
Mm-hmm.
There's way more similarities between what you need in someone at that stage than differences. And if you over index towards a specific skill set, we find that in 6 months, okay, the role changed and they probably needed, you would have hired for a different
Right.
skill set now. So if that person wasn't a generalist and wasn't broad enough, they're probably not going to be ready or excited about like morphing their role into what the business needs at that point.
Sure. Oh
So
yeah,
it's
100%.
harder, but definitely brings
It's
us
more
better
valuable
results.
in the long run, though. You know, it's night and day difference versus what that does for a company. And can you tell me a little bit about how you get to know the people that you're placing?
Yeah. So we do fairly in-depth candidate screens with folks. If we have an active role, we'll reach out to them and say, every person we reach out to is someone who's we've like done as much research on them as we can, right? We've read a lot of their LinkedIn posts, read their profile, really think it is a fit and it's worth everyone's time. And then on a call with them, we ask questions about the role. But first, I always like to start with just asking, like, what are your questions? What are your goals? Right? It kind of varies. Sometimes we're just building our network and just have more like casual conversations with candidates. And a lot of it is just figuring out what's important to them and then being ready to be on the lookout for that as that comes through. And then conversely, with clients, spending a lot of time thinking, like, what are your core values? Give us examples of how that influenced a really hard trade-off decision. That way we can start to kind of like build that values aligned hiring ethos into it and start flagging candidates that might make sense for that company. And that happens a fair amount for us, that even though that's not our open role, we kind of find someone that's so aligned with this company, we'll just make the connection. And oftentimes those folks end up getting hired just because they'll find a role for someone that's that value aligned.
Oh, sure. Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you're if you're all pushing the ball in the same direction, eventually you're going to figure out where you can put your hands to push that same ball. You know what I mean? So that makes perfect sense. And are candidates coming to you, or you're going to find the candidates?
Yeah, both. It's totally a mix. So
Really?
especially, I mean, the talent ecosystem is constantly evolving, right? We go through phases where most of the applications, like to call them the like shoot your shot applications, are the we're looking for 8 years of experience and you only have flight attendant experience, which is all experience is experience. But if you can't write code, you're probably not 8 years of professional code, right? You're not going to be a
Sure.
good fit. So a lot of inbound has historically been fairly like low quality with not very many that actually make it to interviews. Um, I will say it's pretty clear when someone is a right fit, right? They've
Sure.
got a really good tagline, bringing those people in. But most of the work we do is going out and finding the candidates. Um, that lets us tap into that passive candidate pool of
Sure.
folks who are happy in their job, but for the right opportunity are open to a conversation, but just aren't spending their time actively on job boards. That's where we find most of our folks. And then we build partnerships with, like, for instance, one of the partners I've been working with lately is Hire Black. We love the work that they're doing, support folks going to their conferences, and we're in their Slack group and we get to spend some time in there. And I find that almost anytime I post a role, I get a lot of questions. Folks are saying, like, would I be the first? Let's talk about, like, what does racial equity really look like here? Is it just buzzwords? And a lot of that is where we get to build trust and bring value to show that we can ask those questions really candidly, but not make it seem like this candidate is like needy or whatever. Just lets them be a little bit more candid with us. And then we can make sure they get their answers before determining if it's worth their time.
Well, and the
And the reason
biggest thing there is there's value on both sides. You know what I mean? Is that there's value in knowing what you're going into on the company side, and there's value in knowing what is important to the candidate if you're going to be doing the hiring. Because one of the and for people that don't know this, that are listening to the podcast, surprisingly, hiring is one of the most expensive things that you can do for your company, and that is exponentially grown when you're talking about turnover. If you're in a high turnover industry, hiring is exceptionally expensive to small businesses. Very, very expensive. Probably you can probably shed a little light on why that is so expensive better than I can.
I mean, it takes a lot of time and effort. I mean, we're a service company, right? We use technology to enable us to move as fast as we can. But at the end of the day, we like to think of ourselves like a bridge. We're really that bridge between these hiring teams who are excited and nervous and like protective of their company, but also open. Like, they're kind of feeling a lot of ways. But then these candidates who are also nervous, but also excited, right? Everyone's feeling a lot of the same feelings. And we see ourselves as that bridge. And we also get to kind of bridge that power dynamic, right? Someone coming into a conversation, there's almost always going to be a power dynamic coming from that hiring team. So we like to kind of just like build that empathy in to that human side of what that looks like, and find that, I mean, at the end of the day, we're people with mortgages and bosses and trying to kind of figure out what that looks like for us. But yeah, like you mentioned, kind of that mutually beneficial piece. And that's where I think we do our best work, and we get to be humans there. So I love all the tools coming out in the recruiting tech space because it lets us spend more of our time being humans.
Sure. Sure. I think that that what you guys do is so beautiful because it really pushes, like, the American dream is kind of what runs through my mind, you know what I mean? Because you kind of empower both sides of that coin to experience that. You know, you get to empower a um probably newly funded startup with their ability to kind of stand on their own with the tech, with the talent, whether it be in the tech or the clerical space or the hands-on space, whatever that role may be filled. You allow them to kind of go from hobbling to standing in a strong foundation. But you do that for the candidate as well. Is we have to your dream as a mom to a newborn is, I need this amount of flexibility. I need this amount of time with my child. I need this amount of value that I can bring to the equation because I don't want to feel worthless whenever I come to my job and always be worrying about what is a valuable thing that I can do to my company. Because people that think like you and I, truly, that is something that goes through our brains. If we don't feel valuable somewhere, we don't want to be there. Regardless, not regardless, but pretty much exclusively regardless of what the other variables are in that situation, is that we have to feel like there's some reason for us to be there or some bang that we bring for your buck for it to make sense, honestly. And
Yeah, and then
so,
for so many of the companies we work with, like we talk a lot about impact. Of like even if you're just a marketing solution, like what is that impact? What is that like drive? What gets you all up? What about your customer are you excited about? Really helps candidates start to envision like, yeah, what that impact they're gonna have is. Yeah,
yeah,
great point.
absolutely. And so I say that to ask you this: as you guys are scaling up, as you are accomplishing more of your goals, as you guys are working really hard at what are you doing, where do you go from here? What is the next steps to level up for your company? Are you guys introducing pieces of technology, or are you scaling up and adding people to your team? What is the bandwidth that you guys hope to achieve?
Yeah, really good question. So this year we're kind of looking at stability. It's been a wild market in terms of hiring teams, hiring and layoffs,
Hmm.
and looking at that. I think
Yeah.
the
The
team.
last 3 years have not been very friendly to you as far as consistency goes in the hiring space.
Exactly. So that's our theme this year is like stability. Our two goals are focus and fun internally. I have a team right now. I think there's 5 of us right now. At times we kind of scale up and down with contractors, and we've been building out an operations and DEIB, so diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging roster of really amazing consultants. And we work so closely with these companies to build their hiring pipeline that we're able to learn like, oh, it seems like you're ready. You have a bunch of new managers who've never hired before. Let's bring in some training to get that. Like we're so in lockstep with what they're working on. We're able to kind of make those recommendations because you hit the nail on the head. Retention is way more important than hiring.
Oh yeah. Oh my
Way more
God.
important. So we want to be we kind of like our wedge into the startup industry is definitely recruiting, but we see ourselves as much more than that. Like we build a lot of operational hiring processes and do kind of beyond that. And you asked the question of like what's next for us. So our big like foundational mission is kind of around, and why I work in startups is that I mentioned innovation earlier. I think innovation needs to be for everyone, and it's pretty clear that we build innovation based on our lived experiences.
Oh yes,
And
absolutely.
if we can, continue to keep tech to have very limited experiences, I think it's really important that these startup innovators, they represent our population, right? Otherwise, in 10 years, so many of us are going to have these like major innovative leaps, and then so many of us are not.
Hmm.
And that's where it's so important to have that representation. So that's kind of what our team moves towards. So we like our work because we get to work on lots of projects at a time instead of just one. And then how we've kind of evolved towards this stability is recognizing that seed companies need different things than Series A companies. Everyone kind of needs a different set of solutions. So we work just like a startup ourselves and can be nimble, and we're kind of looking to enhance what companies are doing. So we're not necessarily trying to replace their functions. When we have clients who probably should hire their own, we're going to tell them you should probably hire your own recruiter.
Oh
And
yeah, sure.
this is how we can offboard you, and this is how you could still work with us on these roles, but not on these roles, just kind of based on what we've seen in the market to be successful there. So yeah, just continuing to like evolve our relationships with clients, and then continuing to see candidates really thrive. That's definitely what gets our team excited.
Sure. And I love that idea of focus and fun. The what you have in store when you're talking about focusing on or holding most relevant those words focus and fun is
Yeah.
that you get a lot of the same effect that we have here, where the top of your funnel feels really fast because someone is so excited about how excited you are about your company. And that is probably the biggest privilege that we share in the startup world, is that um, we are very thankful every time we have a full top of our pipeline, whether that be for candidates or for actual sales that we can make or clients that we
Yeah.
can onboard. But the fun aspect of it goes so undervalued, especially in the startup space, because obviously if you're in the startup space, you've identified a problem through lived experiences out there somewhere in the world, and you are developing and building a solution for that exact problem. Um, and if you're not having fun doing it, man, it's going to be a long, long, rocky road.
Yeah, and that's where remote teams get really interesting, right? And that's
Sure.
where we talk a lot about centering, right? So when we do a search, we're not saying, great, we're going to bring you, we talk first about what's missing on your team, what's
Sure.
overrepresented, what's underrepresented. Then that defines diversity, right? Is to enhance that. And then in our search, we're going to center whatever that is, right? If that's maybe Blackness, if that's women, that's queer folks, whatever, that's veterans, right? We're
Hmm.
going to try to center that identity. And that means that our language is going to put through that lens.
Sure.
So if you
Absolutely.
think of the fun side of things, think of, early stage startups, so much of that like rowy culture of San Francisco is like there's the keg on tap and everyone goes out for whiskey after work. And I mean, that centered what a lot of those employees were and how they identified and how they wanted to have fun. And again, this is where I didn't feel like startup space was for me anymore, having a child that kind of just wanted to go home and go to bed. I needed childcare. I couldn't work, an extra night a week was actually a really big deal. I wanted my family to be able to come to events. And there were so many different pieces that so many companies do that and some don't. But for us, we have a lot of parents on our team, mostly women, been able to center some of those identities. So figuring out like what's fun for us has been a fun one to figure out, like what is that. And then remotely, obviously, I think fun is challenging, so we just got to have an in-person retreat. Are you able to see your team ever? I know we're a remote team and we really enjoy getting to come together in person. Is that something that your team's able to do?
Oh yeah, we come to the office every day. Every day. Georgia during COVID was the last state to kind of shut things down and the first state to open things up. And honestly, we had a team of about 5 at the beginning of the COVID lockdown, and we still came to the office pretty much every day, because we were basically doing our business virtually. If you were sick, you stayed home, but we were doing everything via Zoom. And then we immediately went to how can we bring value to people? We started a virtual networking group. We started, working with a digital power team where we were bringing some value to people that were hoping to post more on social media and LinkedIn. We started some engagement groups that were on those lines. We did a lot of things that were, we took over a lot of responsibility in the networking groups that we were already a part of to kind of continue those things rolling. But I think the best thing that we did was just knew that COVID was not going to be a really, really short term, a short term issue. We
Mm.
expected it to live for a while, and we ended up doing really, really well because of that. And honestly, in 2023 in February, as we stand right now, the landscape of small business and hiring and firing and remote work and on-site work and everything is just different, and it constantly changes and evolves, and it's going to continue to change and evolve. Over the next year, you don't know what the next year is going to bring for us, and I really think that is why people like Nikki are so valuable for your team, is because you have such a wide lens, and don't take it for granted. You have such a wide lens of and not being so focused that you lock yourself into focusing on one attribute of one person and seeing what is most valuable. You know,
Mm.
you have a wide lens where you say this person is valuable, and I take this entire person for the entirety of who they are, and I find them, a home, and not a hotel room. You know what I mean? When it, as far as finding a placement in your job goes. So
Yeah,
I
I think
think
it's
what you're
almost
doing
like
is really, really exciting. I think the value that you bring to the people that you're working with is really, really exciting. And I think people like you existing out there in the world that want to help people and bring value to those people is exciting for people like me that want to do the same thing, because I know that there are like-minded individuals in the same space out there that just want to do the right thing. So this conversation in itself has been exciting. I have one more thing to ask you. This is usually how we close our shows here. Obviously, like I said, podcast is called Burn the Ship, right? You've burned your ship. You are obviously neck deep in what it is that you do. Um, I am as well. I actually just took my fiance to the doctor last night. We're expecting a baby sometime in the next, I don't know, it could be 30 minutes. It could be it could be two
Right.
weeks, it could be no time, you know. So, and I have a 5-year-old myself who's about to turn 6. So, you know, finding the value in the people that you're working with is super, super exciting to me. And this conversation has been very, very refreshing. But I want to know, for the people out there that are listening now that have heard about you burning your ship and helping so many other people burn their ship with the value that you bring to their company and their lives. Uh, Answer this for those people, you know, why should I burn my ship? You know, what is the value, and what did you feel when you burned your ship, so that other people can feel and experience that same thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think philosophically, I normally take a step back of like, am I ready? Am I wanted in this space? Is this a place that I'm going to be able to make an impact? Because sometimes that's not it, right? Folks that kind of burned those initial ships, maybe they should have left. Might have been better for some of those indigenous populations. But so for me, you know, over when I look at my career, I've spent time in different places and realized I don't have a role here. I don't have a role here. So I needed to make sure there was that fit, that it was not only an interest for me, but also that like the community I was connecting with, um, it was valuable, right? I wasn't just assuming that this was the need. So I think for me, it was that people talk about product market fit, right? I
Hmm.
wanted to make sure that there was that product market fit and that I was approaching it the right way. And um, there's so many, I love the concept of stepping out of the binary,
Sure.
right? Which is a little bit different than the partnership theme. But I think that idea that you can test the waters
Oh
before you
yeah.
get to that space. And I think that's so critical. And then I also find that being a founder is hard work, and it's hard mental work, and building a community of other folks who are pretty all in, and then being able to intertwine and then sometimes untwine,
Hmm.
whatever that word is, to separate yourself from your founder's identity. I think it's really healthy, because it's so easy to have that just be all that you are and all that you bring. So when folks are kind of thinking about these moments, know that do that and then find your community, right? Once you've made your go moment, like the founding communities, the startup communities are so amazing. Entrepreneurs everywhere who like gone all in for a thing. That always brings me so much joy, right? To see that championship
Absolutely.
banner come down and that person that put everything they had into it. That's always like really empowering to see. And that's what we're doing as entrepreneurs. And it is really draining to do every single day without your people.
Sure.
So that's kind of the
Absolutely.
advice that I'll leave there. I last week got the privilege of seeing a lot of founders I've been in a monthly meeting group with, and especially if the thing you're doing is personal to you, highly recommend kind of finding your tribe on that one.
Sure. I find you very refreshing, and I find that answer incredible. A lot of people, they come on the show and they say, "Hey, dive into what it is that you do," especially tradespeople. You know, if you know your trade well and you know that industry well, dive into it. And if you know the problem that you're trying to solve and you're confident in your solution, I fully stand by the idea that you can burn your ship and pivot later and make it work, and lean on people like Nikki to help you really hone in on what it is that you're trying to deliver for people. But what you said is so good. You have to have done your due diligence and knowing what it is that you're trying to attack, and you have to build some sort of tribe of people that are coming out there and are going to, you know, when your back's on the wall, they're going to help you pull it off of it. Okay, because you need those people. Because in the words of, you know, my good friends over at Atlanta Tech Village, it takes a village. It literally takes a village to conquer what it is that you're going to go through the startup space. So,
I'm glad you're part of mine now, Bailey. Thank
yes,
you.
thank you. I appreciate you as well. This has been a great time. I look forward to having you back on. I'm going to send you some stuff about the pitch contest and stuff, and I hope to connect you with some of those companies as well, because I think you can bring tremendous value to those guys. But until next time, until the next episode, I think that's it for today.
Thanks, Bailey.
All right, thank you. Talk again soon.
Bye.